Hello, my name is Connie Brown-Dearmin. I am an assistant professor of humanities at the Melbourne campus here at Eastern Florida State College. When the elective professor teaching electives walks into a classroom, they can safely assume that at least on the first day, everybody's in there because they're excited to be there and they're kind of interested in the material. I don't get that. More often than not, if the thought bubble of my students was visible, it would be something like this. Oh, I don't understand why I have to look at a piece of art from 650 years ago when I'm going to be an accountant. What good does that do me? And I love that challenge because I know exactly what good that does them. A couple of years ago, I got an email from Brad, and the subject line said, "Props, you were right, you win." And Brad proceeded to tell me in this email the following story, which I tell my students. He said, I was up for chief financial officer of a Fortune 500 company. It was down to me and another person. And at that point, you're splitting hairs. Anybody can do the job. Hard skills, both of them have, comes down to the soft skills. And we know the soft skills many times really get you the job. And in an atmosphere where we go to college to get a job, I have to sell humanities in a way that an accounting instructor doesn't have to sell accounting to an accountant. But I have to sell humanities to an accountant. So Brad tells me this story, and he gets seated next to the CEO at the company holiday party. It's a moment. The opportunity is there. The door is open. And Brad, because he'd had a humanities class in his college life, not his finance class or his class about managerial statistics or managerial economics, but because he'd had a humanities class, he knew, and being the savvy soft skill guy that he was, he knew that the CEO, he'd done his research, he knew him, he knew the CEO was an architecture buff. In another life, he'd wanted to be an architect. So Brad didn't have to be a scholar in humanities. He was just exposed to architecture. He didn't have to know all of the ins and outs of it. He just had to sound intelligent, know a little bit about it to make a connection, and he said to the CEO, "Have you ever been to Frank Lloyd Wright's Falling Water? It's an amazing home." And of course the CEO went bananas. "Why, yes, of course I've been there. And do you know if you spend enough money, you can even stay there overnight?" And blah, 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 blah. And it went on and on and on and on. And as I say to my students, I'll say to you, we know the happy end of the story. Brad got the job. And he didn't necessarily get the job because he could create a spreadsheet with both hands behind his back. He got the job because he knew how to speak intelligently about architecture. And that comes from humanities. We learn to be more self-aware. We learn what made us who we are. And that creates greater self-awareness. We learn to critically think about ourselves, our place in the world. And critical thinkers and people who are self-aware make better individuals, better citizens, which then in turn creates a stronger country, and in turn creates a better world. And I can't think of anything more important or more relevant than that. I give my students the opportunity to experience other cultures, other worldviews, other than the Western worldview, and we are seeing the results of cultures that don't understand each other. And I have such a wonderful opportunity to help my students view the world through a different filter, view the world through a different lens, and I can't see any way that that isn't beneficial. The biggest challenge is and always has been relevancy and value. It's very easy for my colleagues in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, to express and to quantify the relevancy, the immediacy, the value of what they teach. It's not so easy with humanities, as I said earlier, the student who wants to be an accountant immediately understands why they have to take Accounting 1 and Accounting 2. They don't necessarily immediately understand why the humanities is relevant. That's true at a micro level with the student, and that's very true at a macro level with the culture at large. And that's the biggest hurdle that I see and that I have seen. We are constantly under threat, those of us who are in the arts, music, in the humanities, art history, those kinds of courses. We're viewed as whipped cream in society and in culture. And so the biggest challenge I have in my classroom and in a broader sense is to get people to understand the relevancy and the importance and the value of the humanities. You know, it used to be that we said you went to college to get an education. And now we say you go to college to get a job. There's a subtle difference there, but it's huge. And I tell my students, you're here to get an education. And if college is working the way it's supposed to, you're supposed to be uncomfortable. You're supposed to be anxious. Because if the instructor is doing what they're supposed to do, if the college experience is doing what it's supposed to do, you are supposed to be taken out of your comfort zone, exposed to something new. Maybe that changes your worldview. Maybe the thing you've always hung your hat on doesn't make sense to you anymore. That's unnerving. But if you allow that process to happen, if you critically think your way through that process, and the humanities course takes you there, you come out the other side stronger, smarter, more confident, and no matter what you want to do for a living, those are the qualities you need to get that job. Thanks for your time, and Dearmin for Humanities.